Good morning and welcome to the Gardening with Gill video series. It is mid-March 2021. I'm your host Will Redfern, and in front of me as usual is Gill Gillespie. Give us a wave, Gill. We are both Norfolk master gardeners. Gill has been growing vegetables his entire life, ever since he was a boy growing up on a farm in southwest Virginia, so he knows a lot about growing veggies. We are filming this series with the intent of showing residents of Norfolk useful tips in planning, planting, and maintaining their vegetable gardens. And we shoot about one vegetable per video or so. This is especially useful in times like this when growing your own vegetables is a better or more attractive alternative than buying them in the stores. Well, as I said, it is a mid-March 2021, and that means spring gardens. We're about to prepare our spring veggie garden, and of course one of the things that goes in the spring veggie garden is potatoes. So Gil, what do we do?
Today we're going to go ahead and work on our potatoes. In this area, the potatoes that we grow normally are the red potatoes, red ones, which are Pontiacs in New Orleans, or you can grow the baking potatoes, which are the Kennebecks, or you can grow the Yukon Golds, which are the gold potatoes. So those three potatoes grow well here in this area. But to prepare them, we need to take a potato, and a potato, by the way, is a tuber. And a tuber means that it has buds on it so they can actually produce plants. And so the potato itself is known as a tuber. And on the potatoes, to get what we need to do, we don't need to plant the whole potato. It's kind of a waste. So we cut the potatoes up, and so we get like two buds or two eyes. We call them eyes on potatoes. We get about 2 eyes to a piece of the potato, and we can cut it any way that you need to carve out the eyes. So today we're going to go ahead and cut up a potato and demonstrate making the pieces of the potato so that we can dry them. And when we talk about the drying, once we cut the potato, it's wet and weepy. And when it's in this condition, you cannot just put this in the ground this way because it usually rots. What we need to do is to put these in a box somewhere, lay them out, and let them anneal or dry. It takes 3 days to a week. Sometimes it's longer. It's fine, but they need to dry before, and this needs to anneal before you put it in the ground. And that usually takes about at least 3 days, maybe a week. And so we'll take our potato and we'll try to carve out as many of these eyes as we can to make our rows go further and to get the number of potatoes that we need for our row. When we're doing the potatoes, when we're doing the planting, we'll go ahead and plant them down about 6 inches deep in a trench, and then we'll cover them up with one side to about 6 inches deep, so that they're down in the soil 6 inches deep. And it'll make kind of a half hill on the row. And when we get to planting time, we'll demonstrate this. But we need to take these out and make as many cuttings as we can out of it.
So the first step is to cut out the eyes of the potato and let them dry for 3 to 7 days, and then we can plant them.
So we've taken the eyes off of this one. So this potato produced 5 nice cuttings. This part of the potato, not being a cheap type person, but this is still edible. These potatoes are very edible. So the parts that we don't use on the big potatoes, they will be mashed potatoes for dinner. But when we get ready now, when these dry for at least a week or so, then you can go ahead and plant them. You'll plant them down into the row, and you'll set them with the eyes up. You'll set them 12 inches apart, and then you take the hill and cover half of it over on one side of the ridges, and you leave it there until they come up through that soil. And when they do that, you go to the other side that you've made and cover up those again. So we cover them twice. So now your potatoes are growing in a mound. That's where all the potatoes can produce, in the mound. So this is the way that we would do our spring planting for the potatoes.
All right, and we will get to the planting of the potatoes in just a minute. Thanks, Gill. All right, everybody, we are back. It is exactly 1 week after Gill cut up those potatoes Now let's take a look at them, see what we got here. Gil, what are we looking at here?
We're looking at the potatoes, and the reason that we cut them, let them dry for a week, is that we need the potato where you cut it to a nil so that it's not wet and juicy. Because when you put this into the cold soil, if it was just freshly cut, the potato more likely would rot. So we let this anneal, that stops that decaying part. So then now we're ready to go ahead and put these in the soil today. We'll get ready to plant the row.
And we've got some yellow Yukons and we've got some red Pontiacs,
Yes,
right?
Okay. And we're going to get those planted shortly, but first I'm going to put a little bit of organics down the row where we're going to plant them.
Some organic fertilizer.
Just a little down through here today.
Right down the row. Look at that beautiful soil. I should have started by saying we're back in Gill's garden. That's where we are.
And then we'll bring the hoe back down through the row just to give that a stir.
Just tidying up the row there.
Okay.
See that?
And to stir the fertilizer just a little bit, even though it doesn't burn because it's organic. So I like to stir it and loosen this because we're going to put our potato sets in the trench now.
So we've got the row laid off and we've got some fertilizer in there, some organic fertilizer, and now we are ready to
We're ready to plant our potatoes.
Plant the potatoes.
And when we plant the potatoes, we'll take these and we'll turn them with the eye side up, with the gut side down, and we'll push them right into the soft soil I just made, okay? And snug them in. And we'll put these about 10 to 12 inches apart.
Eye side up. 10 to 12
Eyes
inches
up,
apart.
eyes up alert, okay?
Okay.
And we're gonna put these about 10 to 12 inches apart.
Right down in the bottom of the row.
Right, settle them right in nice and good, okay? These are the Yukon Golds. And we're going to plant a half a row of Yukons. And we're getting about a half a row with my cuttings. And now we're going to do the red Pontiacs. We'll push these in. Put a marker. We know where to start. We'll do our red Pontiacs. It takes a little while to plant potatoes, especially if your row's long.
We got a long row here. We got lots of potatoes coming this spring, late spring. So the potatoes needs to be covered so that they're about, I'm going backwards. So we need to take this side of the row and we're not holding into the potato, we're bringing the soil from back here and heeling it up over top of them so that they're down at least about 4 or 5 inches. Now that we've got the Yukons covered, now we'll go cover our red Pontiacs. I'm just taking one side of the trench down there. How much are we covering them, Gill? Is that
We're covering about 4 to 5 inches.
4 to 5 inches, okay.
Okay. Now that we have those covered, we'll have another project to do on this row. Once these potatoes actually come up through this, you see the little top of the potatoes, then we're going to go back and do the other side, like this. And that's how you get your potato mound. But I won't do that though until these potatoes come up. And then I'll cover the little tops up again and I'll make the potato mound.
How far should they come up? Like
about
an inch?
3 inches.
3 inches, okay, about 3
Being
inches up.
sealed. And then you can just recover them with the soil from this side. And then that makes your mound right here. And your potatoes have lots of good room in there to grow and produce.
All right. So that is potatoes from start to finish. And Gil, how long should that take once you put them in the ground like this before you
That's
can?
according to the weather and stuff. It's going to be about 4 or 5 weeks.
4 or 5 weeks.
It takes a while for them to grow to get up that high.
All right, and from start to once we put them in the ground to harvesting time, what do you think?
Harvesting time is not until they actually grow. And you'll see little blooms that start on top of potatoes sometimes. When it gets to that stage, if you want to gravel out some little young ones, you can reach in there and get the little ones out. Or you can just leave them until the vine starts to die. And when the vines start to die, then you take those out and you dig your potatoes.
All right, potatoes A to Z. Thanks, Gil.